So the upside generally has been that awareness of vocational training is very limited. And mobilization, as I'm sure you've heard from a lot of people, is one of the biggest challenges in the sector, right? And as soon as we went virtual, we tried to mobilize virtually. And that was a bigger success than we realized. The other two ends of the value chain of what happens before vocational training and what happens after vocational training is honestly where a lot of effort we think we'd want to sort of invest in as well.
Today we have with us Ms. Medha Onyal, Program Director of Vocational Training at Pratham Education Foundation. Ms. Medha co-leads Pratham's Vocational Training and Entrepreneurship Unit, Pratham Institute, which has trained over 120,000 youth across 15 states. She's passionate about building scalable solutions for rural workforce development, micro-entrepreneurship, and bringing more women in the workforce. Medha, thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you, Yamini. Great to be here.
So, Medha, walk us through your professional work life leading up to Pratham.
Sure. So I work in skill development and we train a lot of students, and I think I'm also sort of a byproduct of Pratham. Okay. I graduated from St. Xavier's College in Mumbai. I briefly worked in journalism with the Times Group. I continue to be very passionate about writing, so those are things that I now do instead of from a question point of view. Now I've moved to the solution side of things, and I've been with Pratham for over 5.5 years. I started off with Pratham when we were sort of scaling up our entrepreneurship and skill development work. And in about 2 years after, I started leading the organization along with my colleague, Mr. Rajesh Thokle, and it's sort of been a very rewarding journey. So a lot of what I've learned, much like how we train our students, has pretty much been on the job.
Great, that's wonderful to hear. Now help us understand why Pratham felt the need to venture into skill development, and what are some unique features of the programs at Pratham Institute?
Sure. So again, Pratham's vocational training journey sort of precedes me. So I'm only as faithful a narrator as I've heard stories from my colleagues. But I think like our CEO says, Dr. Rukmini Banerjee, that a lot of organizations that work in with older age groups very often realize the need to start much younger. And very often when you start working with a younger age group, you also realize that you need to work on urgent solutioning for livelihoods and employment related problems. So I think we fall sort of into the latter category. We are, of course, primarily an educational organization. Again, about 15 years ago, we were running large-scale volunteer programs to train youth to teach in their communities. This was a program called Education for Education, or Shiksha ke Badle Shiksha. And a large number of youth were working with us in primary schooling and helping us as volunteers, primarily also because they had limited things to do. And so we launched EFE, or Education for Education, and saw a large number of young people interested in skill development, interested in employability related courses and jobs. Right. And that sort of springboard with which we jumped into skilling.
Right. And I think that's very important because people often look at education and skilling as being two very disjointed areas. But what it's supposed to be is, very interlinked together. And one should not be seen as the more inferior alternative, but just another alternative of, a means of earning a livelihood. So it's great to see that, Pratham has really taken that up. So how does, the Institute, you have a great, emphasis on entrepreneurship. So how do you really support micro entrepreneurs, and how did that program come about?
Sure. So like our work in vocational training was sort of an extension of education. Our work in entrepreneurship was again an extension of our work in vocational training with entrepreneurship.
Right.
So in entrepreneurship, we essentially do two things. We help either youth start their enterprises, which is a different program, or we help youth who started their enterprise to scale and formalize their businesses.
Right.
So in the case of the former, we realized we were training a very large number of youth. We have an alumni body, as you mentioned earlier, of about 120,000 youth. So we had the piping in place. A lot of these students were anyway becoming entrepreneurs, but you also had a large number who wanted to start their own enterprises in the communities that they come from, especially women who couldn't necessarily relocate and so on. So we had a large number of enterprising youth who were skilled, who were interested, but they weren't able to sort of start their enterprises.
Right.
So the question was, what sort of is the gap that would allow them to start their enterprises, and how can we help in that? There's limited we do. These are usually students who are really passionate about it themselves, have skills. Very often what they lack is either access to capital, that's one, and very often don't even have networks to support and build that aspiration on, right? And so we provide training, short-term training, skills they have, but business skills essentially, right? And with technology, a lot of the earlier skills of math and bookkeeping are taken care of. You just need to teach them what needs to be done, and the how usually they figure out. So we provide training, we provide access to capital, and more importantly, I think we provide the community for especially women entrepreneurs to have and fall back on and sort of just continue their journey on. So that's what we do in enterprises that are starting up. The other part of it is enterprises that are scaling. Now this is a different challenge altogether. These are people who've been running their businesses for a little while. Typically there's more you can do in terms of productivity, right? These enterprises can be more productive, can provide better working conditions and so on. So the idea is, in the first case, we help people provide employment for themselves, and in the second case, provide better employment for others. So for instance, one of the sectors that we work in primarily is also construction. Very difficult sector, not the best working conditions very often. We were training students in vocational training to join the construction industry, and very quickly realized that there are so many other problems with the sector of just treatment of labor and so on. And this group that we started working with were people who've been workers themselves, who just jumped up the ladder, right? And so they've been working for about 2 to 3 years, and they then start running their businesses, and they have a team. And so the idea was, how do you support them to increase their businesses so that they then can run them, not ethically is that, but like run them in a better way to provide better conditions for their workers, provide bank accounts, provide social security benefits for their workers, and so on. So two ends of the spectrum. How do you help them make that jump? And once you've taken that jump, how do you stabilize the landing of that jump? Essentially is what we're doing.
I think that's a very important approach, because you're supporting entrepreneurs right from the budding stage all the way to a stage where they can really scale up their operations. And as we're seeing, entrepreneurship is quickly emerging as one of the most in-demand 21st century skills, and especially with the COVID pandemic, which has kind of cascaded people into, finally taking the leap into entrepreneurship. Right. So let's talk a little bit about the pandemic. All of us were unprepared, and it's come down so heavy on us, and it's definitely, affected the skilling infrastructure in the country. So how did it kind of impact your operations and your beneficiaries? And what has been the biggest learning out of this experience?
Sure. So with the pandemic, a couple of things have happened, right? So one was, there was for us, in the alumni body that we have, there was a large number of them who were in their jobs who immediately fell out, right? And so right in April, March, we conducted surveys of how many people had employment. About 40% of them received salaries in the month of March. When we went back again in April and May, about 20% of them received their salaries, right? The initial was, of course, very reactive. So right when the pandemic hit, we had about 3,000 students at our training centers. The idea was prepare them to go back, prepare them with information to sort of deal with that. Of course, that stretched on and we didn't realize it would. So I think in the initial period, we spent some time figuring what the next steps would be. So how do we go digital, right? So how do we conduct training online? How do we conduct assessments online? Can we get employers to do interviews online, for instance? So I think the first 2 months was a combination of figuring what industry will respond and react like, but also building our own skills to some degree. So in the 2 months right after the pandemic, we first ensured safety of our students, safety of our alumni, got very quickly to upskilling ourselves. So a lot of it was, how do we prepare ourselves to provide content digitally. It was a lot of our trainers who were content providers becoming content creators themselves, creating videos and so on to deliver to students. So a lot of sort of our efforts went into upskilling ourselves. But essentially it was, I think, as the cliche goes these days, right? We were on a path that was accelerated, and that's exactly what happened. We did want to see how we can reach a larger number virtually and so on. We were able to do that. So the upside generally has been that awareness of vocational training is very limited. And mobilization, as I'm sure you've heard from a lot of people, is one of the biggest challenges in the sector, right? And as soon as we went virtual, we tried to mobilize virtually, and that was a bigger success than we realized. So we started these webinars, which was to provide awareness about just what kind of skills can get you what kind of jobs, for instance. And in about 60 days, in the first 60 days of running these webinars, we had about 4 lakh views on our webinars.
Wow.
Which is tremendous, we're still sort of grappling with those numbers. They're much larger than when we actually had a foot soldier army going door to door and telling people to come. Right. So I think the upside is that we now know how to cast a wider net. We now know virtually how you can reach a larger number of people. The other upside is we're able to also learn and disaggregate what can you teach virtually and what needs to be hands-on.
Right.
That's been really helpful. The third is, so far industries have been sort of we've been providers to the industry also in some ways, right? We provide students to get jobs. It's now sort of turned more collaborative. We're seeing industries support us with on-the-job training and on-site training when they require labor and a workforce, and we require students to be trained. So it's become a lot more collaborative. So I think those are some of the upsides. Some of the difficulties, of course, there are a lot of them. But how do we sort of reach out to the bottom 30 percentile for us? We know that 30% of students that we normally reach to, we're not able to because of the pandemic. They don't have devices. A lot of girls don't have access, and women don't have access to phones or data. I think those are some challenges. Even right now, as industry is still reopening, actually being able to provide jobs to all our alumni who've lost jobs, I think those are just some of the challenges. So there's a lot of catching up of like the progress that's fallen back that we're doing, but also just trying to see how we can ensure that people don't get left behind because things have gone virtual. So I think a lot of general anxieties, but I think the only certainty in all of this is the fact that people still need jobs, and people are willing to come online even to learn. So mostly I think positive in changes that I think will stay on for us at least.
That's wonderful. And at the risk of sounding cliched, every crisis is an opportunity. And that's what we've seen with COVID hitting, is that it's really kind of acted as a catalyst to the online learning movement, which is really, really picked up throughout India, right? And on the subject of collaboration that you're mentioning, which is, I feel, something where the skill development, community sometimes lacks, is this collaboration with industry, because at the end of the day, they are the, final consumers, let's put it that way, right? So what are some public and private partnerships that you have done at the Pratham Institutes wherein your beneficiaries have been able to benefit from these partnerships?
Sure. So again, split it into public partnerships and private partnerships. Again, public can work, public and working with the government can typically work in the standard way, where they become sort of funding agencies, right? You can be a part of all the government schemes like Pradhan Mantri Kushal Vikas Yojana and so on. So that's one way of doing it. I think for us, the most effective collaboration with the governments have been when it's collaborations, right? And when you're not just a vendor. So for instance, we work in some districts. Government partnerships have essentially helped us work with some of the most underserved populations, I'd say. So we work in, for instance, an area called Gadchiroli. It's a tribal district in Maharashtra, very remote, very far away from industrial hubs, essentially. And we saw with a great partnership with the government, we were able to mobilize. The first cohort was very difficult because there's trust implicitly that we didn't have with the community and so on. Eventually, in the last couple of years, we've had 5,000 students join vocational training from that tiny district, and especially a very large number of girls. Similarly, in Yavatmal, we work with the district collector and the district government, and we've worked with farmer suicide affected families, which has been people who really are in need of vocational training, right? Similarly, in forest buffer zones with the forest departments. So I think it's some of these partnerships have been most effective when there's sort of a two-way relationship where both parties see some value in the other, right? We help gain the trust of a community. We are able to better work with communities who are in actual need, and when the government and the public bodies are also really sort of committed to some of these initiatives, it works really well. And private is similar. We've had about a network of about 2,000 employers with vocational training that we've been regularly providing workforce to. And it's been again a relationship of sort of us being service providers essentially. And right now, and it started a little before COVID, where we started working with them for better apprenticeship programs, for better sort of on-the-job training, where you get a trained workforce, but we train them in a way that's required for the industry. And that works really well. And hospitality is one vertical where we've been able to do it really well. Hospitality, of course, is facing its own challenges right now, but even in sort of any industry that requires a lot of heavy machinery, which is really difficult to invest a lot of capital assets in, we've seen industries sort of come on board, and that's been effective. So I think it's changing of that dynamic is really hard, as you said. The sector doesn't do it really well. It's because the closer you get, the more friction there is, but friction is sort of needed for that progress. So we're going through those relationships ourselves, but they've been most fruitful when there is sort of working together much closely.
That's wonderful. Now looking into the future, what is an area of skill development that as an organization you are wanting to break into or kind of bring to the forefront of your skill development operations?
Sure. So I think it's a laundry list, right? There's so many things yet to be done. I think there's what happens in skill development, which is really important. So I think expanding what all can be provided better training with in collaboration with industries, right? So I think improving skill development and seeing how you can leverage virtual training much better, and in again complete collaboration with industries and where demand is emerging. Is of course an area to be strengthened. There are lots of emerging markets that we're still not in, right? So electronics is booming. We don't work there. We don't work in logistics so much. So I think expanding the scope of activities in skilling is one part of it. But I think the other two ends of the value chain of what happens before vocational training and what happens after vocational training is honestly where a lot of effort we think we'd want to sort of invest in as well, which is everything from awareness of how do you bring more people into vocational training, how do you create it as a viable option, right? And creating mass scale awareness mechanisms for vocational training. And the national education policy also sort of underlines that they want to focus on that. So I think just being able to create better channels for people to enter vocational training and creating that awareness at a younger age, at a community level, creating localized role models and so on. And then there's work that happens after, which is how do you ensure that people are not only placed, but they stay on in their jobs. So ensuring you have better sort of negotiated terms for workers. How do you provide accommodation? We saw with the migrant crisis, right, that people, there were difficulties being faced by the migrant workers. And I think now is again that opportunity window that you earlier mentioned, where you have good time and you have hopefully policy intent, so you can hopefully bridge some of those concerns, especially because in vocational training, at least for us, most of the students come from rural areas and find jobs in urban areas. So, right. That's, I think, mentioned everything that's in the ecosystem, but all of it sort of needs some work.
I think that's very important because it's a hand-holding process at the end of the day. You're training these people to develop a means of livelihood for themselves. And that's not just a 3-month or a 1-year-long course relationship. It goes before and beyond that. So you're absolutely right. And I think it's great that Pratham is going to be focusing on that. So with that, Medha, we would like to end the interview today. Thank you so much for taking time out. It's been a great learning experience to hear from you and your experiences over the past few months. And I wish you all the best for all your future skill development efforts.
Thank you, Yamini.